So all right, after he spends time here at the Gandhi statue outside the Indian Embassy in Washington DC, Prime Minister Modi will be greeted with a formal arrival ceremony outside the West Wing. Now, like I said, typically visiting heads of state spend just a portion of a day at the White House, meeting with President Obama and other US leaders. But remember, President Obama has already hosted the Prime Minister. He's already had a working dinner with him. That dinner took place last night. So it's rare that you have the second day of time and attention from President Obama. But that is what India's Prime Minister is getting on his first maiden visit to the US as Prime Minister. So last night the Prime Minister met with President Obama, Vice President Joe Biden and key US officials at the White House for this working dinner. The Prime Minister, of course, sipped only water, warm water at this dinner, as he's keeping a 9-day Navratri fast that he observes strictly every year. Now, both sides released a joint statement after their first meeting at the White House dinner, and which said that they would work together on a transformative relationship as trusted partners. Now today they'll be meeting again in about half an hour or an hour or so, when the two sides will be holding their bilateral summit. This is a bilateral summit taking place on the sidelines of the UNGA, of course, after which we should expect some sort of a joint statement. We're also looking out for, in great anticipation, for that joint editorial, perhaps a first by the US President with a world leader, certainly a first for an Indian Prime Minister to have a joint editorial op-ed on the op-ed page probably of the Washington Post today. We're expecting that to come out in about half an hour, 40 minutes or so. But lots of excitement clearly on the streets of Embassy Row in Washington DC, where Indians have shown up to greet our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is his last day of his 5-day visit to the United States. And after all the soft power optics that we saw in Washington DC, today is all about getting down to work when he meets in that bilateral summit with the US. So today is all going to be the hard work and the business of it, of this trip. The United States is keen to expand business and security ties with India. The US also sees India as a key counterbalance to an increasingly assertive China in Asia. As part of an effort to spur foreign investment, the Prime Minister had met more than a dozen US corporate leaders for breakfast in New York yesterday. He told them he's committed to liberalizing India's economy and slashing the country's infamous red tape. But we know that some of these business leaders, the US Council of Business had written a letter, leaders of US companies had written a letter to the US President Barack Obama questioning Prime Minister Modi's credentials when it comes to reform. Perhaps all of this will come up when both sides sit down for that bilateral meeting today. In India and the US have various differences over various issues, but Prime Minister Modi has said that despite these differences, or some differences with Washington, the wider relationship could improve. And he said, and I quote, "It's not necessary that we should have comfort in everything. Even between a husband and a wife, there's never 100% comfort." Prime Minister Modi had joked when he spoke at the Council on Foreign Relations. That was yesterday. But again, cutting back for any of our viewers just joining us, these are images you're seeing of Prime Minister Modi on Embassy Row in Washington DC, where the Indian Embassy is located. He's being greeted by Indians who are living there in Washington, who've all shown up at the Gandhi Samiti to greet the Prime Minister. There you just saw a quick image of that Gandhi statue. It's a public monument in Washington DC, erected in front of the Indian Embassy on Embassy Row. It's a gift from the Indian Council for Cultural Relations, and it was dedicated. There again you're seeing close-up images of that very famous statue in Washington DC, dedicated on the 16th of September in the year 2000 during a state visit of the Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee in the presence of US President Bill Clinton. The statue, as you can see right now, is an image really of Mahatma Gandhi. You can see the External Affairs Minister paying her respects at the statue, Prime Minister Modi both right there. at the statue, which shows Mahatma Gandhi in his dhoti. This is a reference to his 1930 march against the salt tax in India. So Prime Minister Modi there, just heading off soon for his second meeting with the US President Barack Obama. Yesterday we were told that the two of them have collaborated on a rare joint editorial that is going to be published in a US newspaper, most probably the Washington Post. The Foreign Ministry had described their first meeting as comforting and convivial. Now they're going to be meeting for the second time today, where they have to get down to all the business of the day. This is going to be Prime Minister Modi's last day in the US before he heads back. Now at that meeting, in what is come to be now expected of Prime Minister Modi, he had a warm equation with the US President. The President Obama greeted Prime Minister Modi in Gujarati, saying, "Kem cho, Mr. Prime Minister?" And Mr. Modi responded in English with a "thank you very much." Now, Mr. Modi also handed over a personal gift to President Obama at that working dinner, a special edition of the Gita, an interpretation by Mahatma Gandhi, someone we know throughout. Even while the US President was running for office, it was made clear that he has a picture of Mahatma Gandhi in his office. Mr. Modi also gifted rare clips of Martin Luther King's 1959 visit to India, which his office, that is the PMO, had broadcasters dig out of the archives. Now, Prime Minister Modi actually right now walking into the building, which is the Indian Embassy in Washington, D.C. Outside, just outside the Indian Embassy, there's a long shot we're pulling out. You can see that is the actual building of the Indian Embassy in Washington, D.C. on Embassy Row. That's the Gandhi statue just outside it. The crowd's now clearing out. Prime Minister Modi has come this morning, paid homage at the Gandhi statue, gone in to the Indian Embassy in Washington, D.C. before he heads off in a bit for his second meeting with President Obama. So we're just playing back some of those shots we saw just a few minutes ago of Prime Minister Modi at this Gandhi Samiti here in Washington, D.C., just outside the Indian Embassy. That's the Indian Embassy you're seeing in the background. That's the security guard from Secret Service in the foreground. Prime Minister Modi, as he exited his car, arriving there, you can hear the chants go up. I'm just going to let us play up this audio a little bit for our viewers right now.